All right, what's up, everybody? It's Monday. Good morning. It feels like football season. No more preseason NFL. College football gets fully started this week, and yeah, let's just roll because there's one bet I've talked about so far. I like the Dolphins to win the AFC East. I think there's value for the Dolphins to be the one seed in the AFC. Value for the Dolphins to go over their win total. Value for the Dolphins, frankly, to win the AFC. I think they can get all the way to the championship game. And that's frankly what you're looking for when you're making these conference bets. That way you can hedge at the very end if you'd like. So, yeah, to me, it feels like the Dolphins are either the one or the two seed at Kansas City, at Baltimore in the AFC championship game. That's how I see their season playing out. And I don't like the Eagles this year. I'm down on the Eagles. I think they could implode. Wouldn't shock me if they only won 6 games. Their win total is 11. No way I'm yeah, definitely taking the under there with the Eagles and the Saints. It's 7.5. I'll probably bump it to 8 just to give myself a little cover, but I'm down on the Saints. Those are the 3 bets that I've locked in. The Commanders is more of a feel at this moment. I don't know if I want to bet the Commanders. My gut tells me to watch the Commanders get their butts kicked by the Bucks in week 1 and then bet the Commanders after that. Remember, you don't have to lock in. You can bet futures when you're using these apps each week, right? That they just update the odds. So you don't have to bet a future bet before the season. The Commanders, it feels like a tough spot for them. Feels like Tampa might really beat the crap out of them, but that they could still be a good team. So I think I'm going to hold off before the season on the Commanders in case I watch week 1 and they something isn't there because it's a rookie quarterback. But I'm leaning towards Commanders. We'll see if I actually lock a bet in, but I am ready to lock another bet in. So that was my recap so far. In case you haven't listened, I've recorded those pods. Please go back and check it out. And here we go. So this one I like. I think I like this one right now. The Eagles under is probably my favorite because that win total is so high. But this one I think I like even more. So let's dive into why I like it. And please, I'm open to. I did the op research. Like basically, I tried to figure out why this win total is the way it is, and the only thing I can come up with is things that nothing, frankly, right? Like the. All right, let's just get into it, and then I'll talk about the opposition to it. So I like the Seahawks over 7.5 wins. The main reason, being a diehard Ravens fan, is Mike McDonald. I think the Ravens defense overachieved in a way last year that is hard to even put into words because this defense, it's not going to be as good this year, at least for the first 10 games or so. Like maybe by the end of the year, it can peak. But what McDonald has did I, was fantastic. He made the most out of what we had. Our defensive line, as far as stopping the run, just isn't great. We didn't have like he's rushing 4 guys, but you never really knew what 4 guys were coming. He just maximized the talent out of the roster. I'm hoping Kyle Hamilton is as good this year as he was last year, but it's hard to put into words exactly how sophisticated that Ravens defense was. When you listen to other coaches talk about it and you go back and you watch some of especially that 49ers game where it's like it was just a defensive masterpiece. He takes that to Seattle. They have a better defense than the Ravens. They have a better roster. They have more talent on the roster. That's just the God's honest truth. The Seahawks defense was terrible last year, primarily because Pete Carroll's just over the hill. Pete Carroll's, the head coach of the Seahawks forever. What his talent has always been is like the motivating an underdog. He gets the most out of the guys when the expectations are low. So the year before, when it was Geno's first year and Russell Wilson was gone, I believe their win total was 5.5 wins, and Seattle went, they made the playoffs, exceeded all expectations, and Carroll got a lot of credit for it. So last year, you figured they'd build on it, but the defense went backwards. And most football people that you listen to last year when you're watching the Seahawks defense was just too predictable, and offenses have evolved, and Carroll just really hasn't as far as the defense is concerned. They couldn't stop the run to save their life. Like some of it's personnel, but some of it is, I really think it's just the coaching. I think, you got to be careful when you try to denigrate, a coach versus blaming it on the players, right? It's a fine line because sometimes it's hard to know, like when you're just watching the game, especially the game of football, because scheme is everything. I think in the NBA and Major League Baseball, coaches tend to have way less of an impact. But in football, there's so many different techniques and little things you can do that depending on the right style of coaching and the buy-in from the big guys up front, the offensive line, the defensive line, and what the chemistry is like, if that really comes down to the organization, the vibe, and I think the Seahawks last year, when you're watching their defense, just no energy. You don't know who the leader is. They tried to bring back Bobby Wagner, and it just didn't work out. So now I think that with the fresh energy of McDonald, the Seahawks defense is going to dramatically improve. They were ranked 27th overall. There's so many different rankings, but based on these advanced results that end up ranking the defenses after the year, they rank towards the bottom in almost everything. But so 27th overall is where they land. I imagine that dramatically increases. Wouldn't shock me if they had a top 10 defense. Defense in the NFL is all about coaching. The talent, there's a handful of defenders who separate themselves. The Ravens didn't have any of them last year. Like Kyle Hamilton was created because he had the freedom to roam and do his thing. I don't know if that replicates itself for the Ravens this year. It'll be really interesting. But I think a lot like Steichen, that was the other bet. I'm sorry, I made that bet. Jeez, I made that bet months ago before I didn't need any information. I was taking the Colts over, so that was another bet I have. Colts over 8.5. I just forgot I made that bet. Like I think I made that bet before the draft or right after the draft. That was something that I liked right out of the gate because it's the coaching. And I feel like it's the same thing with the Seahawks this year. A dramatic improvement from the Colts offense last year because of the head coach. And I think you see a dramatic improvement from the Seahawks defense this year. And then if you look on the other side of the ball, this is going to be, I guess, the easiest prediction. If you're not a diehard Seahawks fan or you haven't really dived into the NFL yet, you want to sound smart amongst your friends, the easiest prediction for fantasy and just excitement this year is that the Seahawks offense will be one of the most exciting offenses, period. The reason is their offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies last year. And he is going to run motion and misdirection, pre-snap this, pre-snap that, very similar to what the Dolphins do, which the first time you're going to see it, it's going to be virtually impossible to stop. Now, if they didn't have Geno Smith, if you told me Geno Smith was traded today for, let's say, who's a good one? We'll just say like an Aaron Rodgers, right? If you told me Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback of the Seahawks, just somebody that I've known has been doing this, Burrow. I know those are the elite guys. I was trying to think of somebody that wasn't like super elite, and I was about to say Prescott, but he always messes up in the playoffs. Just somebody that you knew could get it done. Like sounds funny, but I guess like a Flacco, like a guarantee. Just get the train's gonna get there on time, snap the ball, feed who's open, be a leader. This Seahawks team could be favored to win the Super Bowl because this offense is extremely dynamic. Their offensive line, their right tackle is going to start off on the injured list, but the rest of their offensive line is improved dramatically. They have great running back in Kenneth Walker, and they have depth at running back. But their three receivers, I mean, you could put them up against almost any receiving corps, right? They got Metcalf, they got Lockett, they got Jackson Smith, that kid from Ohio State who's now in his third year. They have a dynamic. They signed Farrah Brown, so they have two tight ends. First one's escaping my brain right this second, but the Seahawks are really loaded on offense, and now this new offensive coordinator. If you watch Washington football last year, and frankly, if you just watch the Seahawks in the preseason, it's extremely dynamic. It's hard to stop. And I think they're going to have more of a physical component than the Dolphins do because they don't have Tyreek Hill, right? Their number one receiver is DK Metcalf, ginormous. I think the Seahawks are going to be extremely, extremely tough to beat, hard to predict what they're going to do. I think they stack the wins early in the year. They seem like a team that gets off to a really good start, 7-2, 8-2. You look up and you're like, man, the Seahawks are really good. Now their division's tough. The Niners and the Rams, and people are high on the Cardinals. I think that's TBD, but the Niners and the Rams, hard to argue they're not going to be good. But so if you want to stay away from the NFC West or the number one seed, if you're not quite ready to go that far, if you don't want to go, maybe as far as I'm ready to go, I make the argument that they're not going to win 8 games. They won 9 last year, and that's with everything I said about Carroll. Now their schedules predicted to be more difficult, but they should start 2-0. And maybe that momentum carries for a handful of, like I said, I think they get off to a good start. So they're home against the Broncos week 1. You couldn't ask for a better start. You're playing, whether or not Bo Nix and Sean Payton get together in Denver, the first week, rookie quarterback in Seattle, that screams under team total for Denver. It just feels like a nightmare matchup for the Broncos. I love the Seahawks that game. I love McDonald to be extremely unpredictable. It's going to be really hard. I mean, yeah, I know I'm preaching here. If you watch the Ravens last year, that defense, it's like you don't even know who's coming when they're coming. And we just have free rushers nonstop. And the roster's just, I'm telling you, that Ravens roster is just not that good on defense. It's the talent in the front 7 in particular. It's just not there. Like, I don't know how great Pierce and Washington and Travis Jones and Matabuke, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I'm going to do a deeper dive on the Ravens here when we get closer to the season, but I don't know if that run defense is going to hold up. I thought McDonald absolutely maximized the team last year, maximized everything. It helped that we played with the lead. I grant you that, but I think the Seahawks are going to play with the lead. That offense, Geno Smith, that's the ultimate wild card, but I thought he's proven himself the past 2 years that he can get the ball there. Like, he's not in the elite. Maybe Goff was the perfect person. Now that I had a minute to think about it, like if you told me if you swapped out the Lions roster with the Seahawks roster, I think it's like on point. And everyone loves the Lions roster. Like, the Seahawks roster is really good. It really is. They have a lot of first rounders on there on defense. So I like the Seahawks. Don't know how else I can. I don't know. I'm not selling it. That's for sure. Because obviously I'm just giving it away here. But I want people, if you're listening, I think the best way to bet on sports is if you think you're ahead of the curve on something, that's where you bet your money. Like, once it feels like a 50-50 game and you just want action on it, that's where you stay away or you just bet for fun. Like, if you're trying to make money, whether or not I'm right about the Seahawks, you want to have conviction and you want to feel like the odds are really in your favor, because that's how you have a chance to basically go 50% for a football season, but still make money by having a couple of futures. So the Colts having a good season and the Seahawks having a good season would make me money, even if on a week by week basis, I'm right around 500, even less, because you got to pay the juice and all that jazz. If you're doing fantasies, you're doing survivors, you're doing whatever long-term season-long things, I think it's healthy if you have an opinion, even if you just like the Chiefs or the 49ers, even if you just like chalk. I was talking about that with Jack on whenever that was on Friday. If you like Georgia to win the national championship, bet them now. Like, if you have an opinion about something, get ahead of it before the odds go the wrong way. But likewise, if you have an opinion about something, but you're not quite sure yet, and you're like, I want to see it the way I feel about the Commanders, then, that's how you say, well, I'm not ready to bet that. And that's the process that everybody needs to go through. Everybody has a process, right? Whether or not you acknowledge it, there's something going on in your brain that is like, hey, this is my thought process on how to make bets. And I want to implore that the future bets is where you get the best value. It just is, because the amount of thought and energy that the odds makers put into it, and this is something I know firsthand, like every bet is favorable for you, if that makes any sense, right? Like, if you believe in something and it's a future bet, you're going to get better odds on it. Whether it's chalk, whether it's a big underdog, whatever it is, they design the bets that way because they want as much action as possible, because they just want you to be, they just want your money involved. They want you to be committed to betting with them. So if they can entice you to bet future bets, yeah, they make it as easy as inviting as possible for player bets, all kinds of things. So throughout the season, when you're trying to bet on a week by week basis, it's so hard because you don't know everything that goes into every little game, right? And trying to analyze each and everything, especially if you don't have the time to do it, can become exhausting. Even if you do have the time to do it, it can become exhausting. So if you take a step back and say, instead of betting each week and trying to figure out if this is the week the Chiefs blow out the Panthers, just for an example, I know the Chiefs are winning 13 games. I've made that decision. Let me ride that out. So I'm not overthinking each week if I want to bet Chiefs -8. Like, that's how I would approach the Chiefs this year. That's what I'm trying to do but again, I say all that to say, if you have a different plan or a different process, that's totally fine. I just think whatever it is, you should be locked into it so you don't go back and forth and try to make yourself crazy. And for me, I'm saying that I will go crazy. If I try to bet football each and every week, I'll go crazy. So I'm in a pool with my friends. I said this last year where we pick every single game against the spread. I think it was $150 per person for the season. That's enough skin in the game for me to have like action on each game. If I'm gonna bet each week, I'm gonna go insane. I know I am trying to run this business, trying to do getting married at the end of the year, just a lot of personal things that I just know myself. So I'm gonna bet playoffs, period, and that way I can be settled. But I want to have, I want the rush, right? That's why we do this. I want to be able to say, all right, what am I willing to lose? Whether it's 10, 15, 20,000, like what's that number throughout the season that I'm comfortable with? And instead of betting 500, 1,500, 2,000 a week, I'd rather put all that money on the future bets and just be done with it and just ride it out. And if something jumps and changes, obviously I can bet accordingly. Injuries can happen, but I'm going to try my best to say let's. And that Packers team last year was the perfect example. If you like the Packers, just leave it alone, and all your bets would have came through. But if you're trying to bet when the Packers are going to be good, when they're not, they'll lose to the Panthers if you're not paying attention. Then they win on Thanksgiving when you don't want to take them. So if you just have an opinion on something, you're better off in this football climate just letting it ride out, just letting it ride out. And that's my 2 cents for today. But yeah, anywho, let's see, how do we wrap this up? Because I did not want to linger here on the Orioles, but it is what it is. I guess the best way to talk about it, and then I'll shut up, is we're lucky to split somehow. Horrible game when Burns pitched on Thursday. That was just deflating. Deflating yesterday, like Arias hit the home run, but we had 2 hits, I think. It's just such a boring game when we can't hit the ball. Like, it's just, oh man. So to win Friday and Saturday feels like a blessing. They're off today. They go to Colorado after they go to Los Angeles. So they got to face the Dodgers first. Hopefully we can start hitting the ball before we come back home, get some momentum. And yeah, so I'll have the Padres play the Nationals, or excuse me, the Padres play the Cardinals. Looking forward to getting back into it. Just annoyed with myself. I guess yesterday, I'm sorry I didn't write in there that I wasn't taking any bets on the games, but just after looking at it, felt like I'd be forcing it because I was annoyed that I liked the Mets on Saturday and then just didn't really pull the trigger there. Besides Lindor, so decided to leave it alone yesterday, which is probably for the better because I would have leaned. I think I would have leaned towards the Mets, but the Padres came back and won. So yeah, I'll see how I feel. Cardinals are pretty much out of it. So the Padres are facing a team that, yeah, as baseball starts to close in here on about 30 games left, it's starting to, yeah, certain teams, if you want to bet baseball, you're going to have to do the research on the prospects, on the pitchers, figure out if the team is looking at prospects or if it's a veteran pitcher who really wants to win because he wants to get paid next year. A lot that goes into it. So looking forward to the Padres and the Cardinals. Appreciate everybody listening. But yeah, the main takeaway from today is Seahawks over 7.5 wins. I absolutely love that. And I love the Colts over 8.5 wins. I love the Dolphins. A variety of bets with the Dolphins. Kind of pick your poison depending on how you feel about the Bills and the Jets. and then I'm fading the Saints and the Eagles. So I'll have that all written out before the season starts, but that's where my head's at now. Hope everybody has a good day, and yeah, see you guys in the morning.